Hi, and greetings from Washington, D.C. My name is Kurt Shickman. I'm the Executive Director of the Global Cool Cities Alliance and a contributor to this report on cool roofs. Our focus was on cool roofs in North America. And so for the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to take us through a little bit about who we are, if you're not familiar with our organization, and then focus on the policy and market review of North America with a focus on the U.S. So the Global Cool Cities Alliance was launched in 2011. We grew out of the Lawrence Berkeley National Labs Heat Island Group. We have a network of global network of about 50 cities and another network of about 27 cities focused on cool pavement, and also working on standing up new markets for cool roofs in 10 countries with an acute lack of access to cooling, which you can see here with the yellow dots. So in the report, our section really focuses on four main categories of policy. So we first cover the model codes. And in this presentation, I'll just be covering the ones in bulk. So we'll talk about ASHRAE 90.1 for commercial buildings and high density residential. We also look at local ordinances, which we define here as municipal or state ordinances. And we'll talk a little bit about California Title 24. We'll also look at green certification and green codes with a focus here on the U.S. Green Building Council's LEED program. And finally, we'll leave the realm of mandatory codes and look at incentives and voluntary programs with a focus on Louisville, Toronto, and San Antonio, where there are some notable wrinkles to what they accomplished there with their rebate and other incentive programs. So let's start with the model codes. So the model codes are extremely important in the U.S. context. While all states and many municipalities have access to or ability to make changes over and above set their codes, most use the ASHRAE and IECC model codes in whole or with slight modifications to meet those demands. So the language in the model codes is very important to U.S. U.S. cool roof deployment. You can see here, this is the ASHRAE climate map for the United States, and I've tried to provide a rough approximation of how our climate zones stack up against the conditions in certain Australian cities using a 5-year average of cooling degree days, just to give you a sense of where cool roofs apply. And in many cases, this is climate zone dependent. As I mentioned, these codes are used across the U.S. You can see here commercial buildings. This is the ASHRAE 90.1 code, and even in the states in red, which are the earliest using the earliest versions or revisions of the code. In this case, 2007 and earlier. That because cool roofs entered into ASHRAE, the ASHRAE model code in '99, all of these states have some form of cool roof language in them because of their adoption of ASHRAE, and similarly with the IECC International Energy Conservation Code in residential buildings. So let's focus in a minute on 90.1. This, as you can see here, is section 5.5.3.1.1, which lays out the requirements for a roof. And here you can see that both the solar reflectance and thermal emittance requirements, these are 3-year aged values. And these are aged based on the CRRC1 standard, which is an ANSI 100 S100 standard. You can also meet these requirements using the solar reflectance index, which is just a combination of the reflectance and emittance. There are a number of exemptions that are included to this requirement for commercial buildings or non-residential buildings. They include for green roofs, for heavily ballasted roofs, for roofs that are shaded by permanent structures, for steep slope roofs, and then also for certain surface coverings such as asphalt membranes and metal roofs. Now, not all the codes have exemptions. This one has I would say the most sets of exemptions that we see in the codes in the U.S. Some of these are perfectly common and acceptable. We always see options for vegetated roofs, for example, in shade. Some are understandable from an energy perspective. So the increased insulation you get from ballast, for example, reduces the energy benefit of a cool roof. And so that's included for that reason, but it doesn't address the urban heat island benefits of cool roofs. So some of those exemptions fall into that category. And some of these would actually be detrimental to indoor air temperature and urban heat island conditions such as the exemption for an asphalt membrane. So turning now to green codes, wanted to look at which are also national in origin and have been a real driver of commercial building adoption, especially at the upper end of the commercial building classes, Class A and B. And as you can see here, there is a credit in the sustainable sites credit for both low and steep slope roofs using an aged SRI, and you can see those values there. Now, these are given different point values depending on the LEED rating system that it falls into, which can be under new construction, under renovations to an existing building, and for residential. So you can see kind of the breakdown there. Now, turning to local ordinances, as I mentioned, what we saw in the US outside of the model codes, especially really kicked off by the 1995 heat wave in Chicago, was a shift in policy to the local level, where a focus was not just on the energy benefits and energy efficiency benefits of cool roofs, but also the potential contribution to reducing the threat of urban heat islands and the threat of extreme heat. And so you can see even in Chicago, which is a cold weather city in the US, was one of the first to adopt a cool roof requirement, largely on the back of the tragedy of the 1995 heat wave. And many of the cities that have adopted it since have incorporated, at least in part, the broader benefits of urban heat mitigation in their rationale for setting the requirements. And as you can see, these are not just large cities and not just southern cities, but cities really all over the map, from as far north as New York, Chicago, and cold weather climates like Denver, all the way down to warmer places like Miami, Austin, and so on. But the real, I think, driver of US cool roof policy has been California's Title 24. And this is in part because California is a massive economy and helps move the market for products across the US and really around the world, but also because the Title 24 inclusion of cool roofs, first as a credit and then as part of the prescriptive pathway, also require the formation of the Cool Roof Rating Council to measure and report and label the surface characteristics of roofs, which has become not just a standard in the US, but really a standard of good practice globally. The other aspect of why California has been so influential is that it's such a diverse climatic set of regions. And so the analysis that has gone into the setting of these code levels is applicable in a wide variety of different climatic conditions. And we often see this language adopted in other places based on the specific zones that are referenced here. And you can see a map of those zones on the left. Finally, with the time we have, I wanted to just talk briefly about voluntary and incentive programs. This is usually the foot in the door that municipalities and others use before they get to a requirement. And I've highlighted, there are more than these highlighted in the report, but I wanted to highlight these three. The first two are rebate programs, and the San Antonio example is more of a direct install program. The Louisville, Kentucky example is notable because this rebate followed an extensive and high resolution urban heat vulnerability analysis and opportunity analysis. And so the rebate amounts were actually targeted to specific neighborhoods. And this really helped preserve a relatively limited municipal budget to focus on cool roofs where they were needed most. In Toronto, they used an innovative, this is a program that has been around for quite a number of years and uses a cash in lieu payment process to help fund a good portion of the rebate, and this was tied to their commercial green roof law. And the San Antonio example is interesting because it goes beyond the roof surface and really is focused on producing a roof system that is manageable, but does so with a cool roof on low-income homes. And it's paired with a utility rebate to help. What we're finding out here is, at least in the San Antonio with steep slope roofs, we're finding attic temperatures reduced by 13 degrees centigrade. And in some cases, energy bills being reduced by up to $1,300 per year, which is a substantial amount in a low-income household. So I just want to close out with a brief look at the U.S. cool roof market. And I'd say that this really tracks well with the policy development, which is that cool roofs have traditionally fallen under energy efficiency and their energy benefits in the codes. And so they have not been valued at the full societal benefits that they provide, which we're learning are quite substantial. So while there is a lot of positive movement in this space, especially on the commercial side, the residential market and other parts of the commercial and industrial markets have been slower to grow, simply because their benefits are not fully valued in policy and by other, sort of the financial community. We do find that costs are relatively comparable for most market sectors between a cool roof and an uncool roof. For certain product areas, particularly on the steep slope roof or asphalt shingles, there's still about a 10% cost premium for cool dark shingles. In other words, shingles that reflect, but look dark. But in most cases, the products are cost comparable, or even in some cases cost negative to traditional options. There's still been concerted opposition to moving into cooler climates with requirements. In this case, climate zones 4A and B, which represents a huge market in the US. But nonetheless, we see certain market segments like membrane roofs, which you have on big box retailers, typically in the US. The cool roofs are actually a greater market share in all parts of the US, about 60 to 40% over their dark options. And this is both for the energy benefits, but also for cost reasons. So it's still room to grow, but we've seen a tremendous amount of movement and growth in this space over the last 10 to 15 years. So I thank you for that really lightning round. There's more detail in the report. I'm happy to take questions offline since I'm joining via video, but thank you for your time, and please feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to discuss further. Thank you very much.